And coming up on this week's show, as 2025 draws to a close, we take a look at Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander's first year in post. We review the key moments from 2025, and we take stock of the year that was Railway 200 with a previously unseen interview about the greatest gathering. So, welcome to Green Signals from me, Nigel Harris, and
from me, Richard Bowker.
And here we go. We're approaching the buffer stops of another year, one that's been action-packed with railway news and events, so we're adopting a somewhat reflective tone on this week's show. Thus, we begin with the Secretary of State herself, the Right Honourable Heidi Alexander MP, who will have celebrated her anniversary in the role back at the end of November 2025. So we're going to look at an interview that the Secretary of State gave to Noah Vickers of The House recently, and which was published on December the 16th in their Transport special. It's important because the Secretary of State has not done many such profile pieces during the time she's been responsible for transport, and given that it was timed, whether deliberately or not, to be published around the time she celebrated her first year in the role, we can assume that it's something of a reflection on her first year. Now, Richard, I've got some pretty clear views about her comments, but I'll hold those for now. What do you think she said of importance?
Well, it's very political, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's an interview that covers sort of planes, trains, and automobiles, really. So there's a section on railways, there's a section on aviation, particularly Heathrow, and there's a section on cars, electric vehicles in particular, and the very political stuff you can see in the aviation one, because she has to be very careful in that, because she could be in this sort of quasi-judicial decision-making role that could have planning implications.
Yes,
so
indeed.
you kind of expect caution with that. That's understandable. So it's the railway stuff that's really interested. But it's going to frustrate many people across the industry.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the favoured few who've got access, right? But, like the thousands or the tens of thousands of who work in the industry and will never have a chance to sit down with her and find out what she really thinks. And these interviews are kind of a way to get those messages and understand what's going on behind the scenes, really. And the real problem, and it is a problem for the Secretary of State, whether she realises it or not, is that having centralised so much, she is the fulcrum, she's the pivot, she is the industry's commander-in-chief, right? Now, she and her officials, and particularly her SPADs, I suspect, will want to portray DFTO and when we get it, Great British Railways, as that firebreak. But unfortunately, right now, it just doesn't wash.
It doesn't.
Okay? Because the DFT exercise such control, and I suspect want to continue to exercise, albeit in a slightly different way in the future. And her real problem, I think, is she's got to speak to multiple audiences, right? And those audiences conflict, whether it's the political audience or there's a political narrative, or it's the industry. And the problem is that they do conflict. So I think the whole thing is problematic because, and I'm going to sort of drop a sort of rock in the pond, Nigel, for us to chat about. I think at the end of 2025, this industry is leaderless, right? It does not have...
Rudderless.
Well, arguably, there is a bit of a direction, right? The Railways Bill does give us some direction. We might not like all of it, but there is some notion of where we're going. But the problem is, in terms of the day-to-day...
I'll take that, yeah.
Yeah, it's the lack of leadership. So the problem for Heidi Alexander, she's effectively the industry's leader because there isn't anybody else. And we'll come to Alex Hines perhaps when we chat, because that is kind of the good news on the horizon. But it's leaderless. So, you think back in the day when you had the likes of Sir Peter Parker or Sir Robert Reid.
Or any of the BRB chairmen who always, even Wellesby, who I wasn't a fan of, stood up for it.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Their tone of voice that they used was different to a politician's tone of voice. It has to be. So Heidi Alexander is speaking to her Labour backbenchers. She's speaking to all the Labour activists. She's speaking to the public, who are, by and large, fairly misinformed about what the railway does and can do and doesn't do, and so on and so forth. So she's got to speak to them. The problem is she ends up not really speaking to the people, the 100,000 or so, who make it happen every day. And that is where the problem lies. And I think of this as a bit like a football analogy. And your favourite sport, obviously.
Absolutely.
Where,
I was just about to say.
Were you really? Well, that's brilliant. You know, the great thing about football managers is they will be relentlessly positive.
Oh, God, yes.
In public about their team's performance and what they've done and so on and so forth. And then the doors get closed and behind the scenes, you know, there's the hairdryer moment, as Alex Ferguson, you know, famously did. And that's the point. You know, for the industry, she's got to be, or someone's got to be, relentlessly positive, inspiring, leading. And at the moment, she can't do it because she's speaking to another audience, and she does so in this article. And nobody is actually leading it. So that is my biggest sadness as we get to the end of the year. We have no leader.
I think it's worse than that because when she does speak, it's relentlessly negative about the railway. I am absolutely up to here and sick and tired.
Whereabouts are you up to?
Oh,
there.
Oh, well, here actually.
Oh, right. Okay, right. Yeah.
I am fed up with her tedious Animal Farm mantra: public good, private bad, and the endless repetition of the alleged endless failure of the last 30 years. How it's been totally crap for 30 years, and nationalisation will sort it all out. Now, I can partly forgive the ideological bullshit because it's what we expect from politicians. What I cannot forgive, and I am increasingly angry about, is it spilling over into outright dishonesty, in my opinion, and I think it's shameful. And there's numerous comments in that interview which had my bristles bristling. But you know, in last month's budget, the government confirmed it will freeze rail fares for. See, I'm that angry I can't speak. Next year, although it's always had the power to do that under privatisation. What then is the point of nationalisation? It hasn't happened for 30 years, and now it is. Like the private sector was responsible for not cutting. Who controlled fares for those 30 years? They did.
Or regulated fares, clearly.
The government controlled.
Which half the time it was a Labour government. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is dishonest in the extreme to constantly put that mantra, which journalists who don't know better will report, and the narrative gets changed. And it is not fair. So when she is speaking up, she's not doing the people who she wants to get out of bed every day to deliver a better service any kind of justice, let alone favour. And I am fed up with that. One other comment that really made me say, what, was when she was talking about HST, and will doubtless come to HS2. I'm going to have to get my mouth fixed this morning, aren't I? I'm aware that there are likely to be capacity constraints between Birmingham and Manchester at some point in the next couple of decades. Oh, really?
I mean, that's just a non-comment, isn't it? I mean, it's
dishonest.
It's just tosh, really.
Well,
it's just absolute nonsense. But
but it goes back to your leadership point. When she does say stuff, it's just crap. And when she's not saying the sort of things which an industry which she wants to deliver for her on behalf of the passenger and the freight customer, the sort of encouragement, knowing that, you know, keep going, lads, I'm right behind you.
And that's the problem, right? So I always ask myself the question, if a copy of the House magazine fluttered its way into all the mess rooms of the various railway businesses and offices up and down the land, whether it's freight or passenger, whatever, you know, signallers, whatever it is, would they read that and go, blimey, I'm following that?
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't. And that's the problem, right? So, yes. I mean, she says, this is one quote: passengers at the mercy of an overly complex and inefficient railway, which results in people being stood on platforms on a Sunday afternoon and trains not turning up. Playing to the gallery, that's just playing to the gallery and trying to say, hey, you know, I understand your pain. The problem is there's the there's a recent survey been done. You know, we used to have the thing called the National Rail Passenger
Yes.
Survey, right? Well, it's not that now. It's called it's got a real snappy title. It's called the RCXS, which is the Rail Customer Experience Survey. And it's big. I mean, the sample size of this is 130,000. It's a sort of a rolling program.
Significant.
So it's very significant. And the Rail Delivery Group, the soon to be, I suspect, abolished Railway Delivery Group, recently published the first set of results from it in December. And they've been able to demonstrate that overall 88%, I think it's about 87.8, 88% of journeys between mid-July and early October were rated very or fairly satisfied by customers. And actually, customers also rated the ease of planning a journey with 95% satisfied. Now, the 12% who were not very or fairly satisfied with their journey is still a significant number. So there's no room for complacency, right? But it's all about getting the balance right. You know, the railway does a lot of stuff actually really, really well. But reading that article, that interview with her, you'd be forgiven for thinking that was
my point. None of what she said correlates to that 88% of people being satisfied. Any other company having that degree of customer satisfaction will be shouting it from the rooftops, and yet she's on about 30 years of failure and stood on platforms in the rain with no trains turning up. It doesn't correlate at all.
There was one quite funny moment, though, when in Lord Hendy's quote in the press release from the Rail Delivery Group about that survey, I mean, I don't know, somebody must have just been through gritted teeth writing these words. It's heartening to see most passengers surveyed were satisfied with the railway, but we know there's room for improvement. I thought that was quite funny. You know, they had to kind of accept that. And it is, you know, there's an awful lot of good stuff. It does come back to this leadership question. For years and years and years, we've always understood that a senior politician cannot be the leader of the industry, because they have to say, in defense of Heidi Alexander, she has to speak to a very broad church of people. But you will not inspire the industry if you talk like that, right? So we need a leader, somebody who knows, as you know, one of my old mates used to say, which end the engine goes on, who gets it, who really understands how it works. Now, could it be Alex Hines? Yes, it probably could, because at DFTO, he's now at least one step away from, you know, the mothership, if you like, from the Department of Transport. And Alex is a good guy. He's experienced. He's run railways before. The problem is for Alex, right? I'm going to say this, you know, conscious that a lot of people will hear it. I hope he's just not too nice, right? Because he's going to have to be quite tough in that role. And he's also got to find a different tone of voice from the government. People are going to have to believe that he's not the Department for Transport. Even I know it says DFT operator, but it's got to be a bit different. It's even more so with the GBR CEO when they come along. Until we find that person or that group, but it really is, you know, the chair and chief executive of GBR is the most important appointment that this government will make. And 18 months after they came to power, they still haven't started the process, and we know how long it takes. So, you know, I'm not kind of holding my breath, but at the moment, no leadership.
That comment that I quoted from about HS2 illustrates why it's important. I mean, is she really that stupid that she thinks that? Is it a political comment or whatever? But it is nonsense. It is just nonsense. Is it a lack of grasp? Is it a lack of knowledge? What is it?
Well, I don't accept for 1 minute that she's not bright, because people who I don't know her, but people who do and who I trust say she's actually very able, very capable, and so that's good enough for me. I think the problem is this conflicting roles, right? She's got to speak a political narrative. That is not the same narrative as inspiring an industry. I mean, listen, remember this quote. I always go back to this. This is from Labour's own policy, Getting Britain Moving, which was published in April 24, right?
Yes.
He said this: great British railways will be led by rail professionals and industry experts and have operational independence. This new structure will end the meddling and interference on operational and industrial relations matters by ministers and Whitehall that has created such confusion and paralysis.
Hear, hear.
That was in Labour's own policy document. They're not doing it, in my view. I know there's lots of stuff. Oh, we haven't had the railways. It's not had its second reading. We can't start a process to recruit into another. Garbage, right? Garbage. Start the process and get the leadership sorted. That is now critical for 2026.
And surely there's stuff that they could be getting on with. You and I know there are plenty of really good rail professionals around, whether it's Mark Hotwood or David Horn or Tim Shoveler or Steve White. There are railway brains of epic size out there who could be having a real impact, isn't there?
And the government will say they are. Look what we've done. We've started to integrate railways. We've got Steve White running South Eastern. We've got Lawrence Bowman running South Western. We've got, these people are there. They're starting to do the job now. Okay, I accept that, and I think you would accept that. However, Great British Railways, the future of this industry, needs its leadership structure in place, in my view, as soon as possible.
Do you think she gets that?
End the cycle that we've experienced.
I mean, she's a very selfish reason for wanting that to happen, to ease the load on her. Do you think she gets it?
I can't speak for anybody. I don't know.
I can't see.
But
any
I
evidence
suspect.
of it.
I honestly suspect, Nigel, that inside the corridors of power at the Department for Transport and in the Treasury, actually, what they want is the cake and eat it. They want it to get better. I don't think anybody turns up wanting it to get worse. They want it to get better.
But they don't want to.
But they think that
power.
if we let go, it won't. So therefore, we'll carry on. No, that is not how to empower, inspire, and deliver. So, we need to break out of that cycle, and we need to be brave. And if you want to be brave in 2026, then cracking on as the top priority with the leadership of GBR would be, in my view, the way to do it.
And on that note, in which you and I have heated agreement,
we should move on.
We should move on. So let's just do that. Now, 2025 has been quite the year for the railway, but it's also been quite the year for Richard, Stef and me here at Green Signals. And so, in time-honoured fashion for journalism at this time of the year, we've produced our own reflective piece on just some of the highlights of the year that we've been proud to have been able to present in interviews, to report on, or simply just enjoy being there ourselves on your behalf. So sit back and hopefully enjoy our reflections on 2025. During 2025, Green Signals became firmly established as the UK's leading railway podcast, covering a wide range of issues and including all the contemporary economic, political and heritage issues affecting the railway today. Our weekly show, every Thursday at noon, has become the go-to source for the industry professional and informed viewer alike, and the range of issues we have covered is truly enormous. We've kept our finger on the pulse of ongoing delivery of major projects such as High Speed 2. This was the remarkable deck slide of the Small Dean Viaduct.
Elliot, the nose itself, what function does that carry out? I mean, it's clearly not just decorative.
Yeah, so as the girders slide over the piers and when they're at cantilever, they deflect up to 400 millimeters.
Right.
And the nose has deliberately got a taper on the underside of it to angle up, so that the tip of the nose or slightly along the end of the nose would catch onto the launch supports, and then the deck would ride up back to the supported level between the piers.
Otherwise, it would literally just drop down as it went over.
Yeah, it would just keep getting worse and worse and worse if we didn't do that. Yeah.
Gosh.
We celebrated the reopening of railway lines such as the Northumberland line from Newcastle to Ashington.
I mean, I suppose two questions which you may be fed up with there, but why is it taking so long and why has it cost so much? Because the original estimate's 166 million and it's 290 short, just shy of 130 million over those costs. So why so long and why so much?
So on timing wise, I think it's been well documented. There's been quite a few hurdles to get over from a construction wise. The project's a huge scheme, 6 stations plus all the infrastructure that goes along that, full new signalling system. There has been hurdles in the way which we've had to overcome, and that's put delays on. We went from unexploded World War II devices to newts at Seaton Delville, sorry. So, anything that has been thrown at us on this scheme has been, which has been a challenge. But
our groundbreaking, popular and regular reviews of parliamentary select committee proceedings has brought a critical area of government that directly affects the railway to a new and wider audience.
Under the provisions in the bill, how likely is it, do you think, that the ORR realistically could overturn an access decision made by GBR?
I think on the basis of lawfulness and reasonableness, procedural fairness, one would expect that GBR would perform their decisions effectively in that area.
Our incisive analysis of current affairs has ensured Green Signals is always at least one step ahead of the media crowd.
And I say possibility, not probability, right? Possibility that it gets so difficult that the government has to come back and almost rethink the things it originally committed to.
What could exist in stuff that we think is secure?
It's not impossible. I would not rule that out.
Wow.
Right? So,
such as?
Well, anything that we think is committed. I mean,
we thought HS2 was committed, didn't we?
Yeah, pushing things back. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do about pushing things back. Rephasing is the phrase, isn't it? But, all the money that was put aside for light rail schemes and local transport schemes, outside of London, maybe that has to get revisited, right?
We've become effective influencers as well, being invited to comment in national TV, radio and print media on big breaking stories. Richard was invited to shed light on this on the Radio 4 Today programme, where he used the word bonkers. Loads of others piled in, and by mid-afternoon, after another appearance by Richard on TV news bulletins, the ORR caved under the pressure and its bonkers decision was reversed. And when we have a strong view about something, we are not afraid to express it. We will always speak truth to power. But they haven't said anything about any of that, have they? And yet it's supposed to be a brass, much loved, and they are, and powerful brands like Great Western, LNER. Are they going to be plastered with this? And it looks like sub-cheap airline branded. It's just horrible. A popular feature of Green Signals are our interviews with key leaders in the rail industry. Our style is open and informal, but challenging and informed. We allow our guests to express their views, but we're not afraid to ask a punchy question when appropriate. In 2025, we raised the bar yet again with the calibre and influence of our guests. Early in the year, we spoke with Andy Bagnall, the outgoing CEO of Rail Partners, who made his views very clear.
Labour had put a document out called Get Britain Moving. It was their policy for rail. What was your reaction to that when you read it?
Well, in a sense, disappointment. We had argued for a model that wasn't a million miles away from the previous government's vision. So we thought you could have the best of both worlds.
Ian Yowett, the inspiration behind much of today's open access operations, was equally direct.
The abstractive numbers that are always bandied about are modelled. And let's remember that the modelling that's done on those numbers is based on virtually PDFH information, which lags years and years behind what's actually happening on the railway. So on the railway today, PDFH still hasn't caught up with the number of open access services and what they do. And in relation to the cost, I mean, you would expect me to say that there is no cost.
We've interviewed leading political figures, such as former MP and TSC chair Hugh Merriman, now chair of the Liverpool and Manchester Railway Board, who was candid about his role in cancelling HS2 north of Birmingham.
One of the things you mentioned was HS2, and it's so intrinsically linked to what's planned for the region. In October 2023, the Prime Minister stood up at the conference and announced it was cancelled. You were a rail minister and HS2 minister. Were you consulted on that?
Well, I mean, I was notified of it. It's probably the right way to put it.
That's a no. That's a no.
No, so I wasn't consulted on it. It was a difficult time.
And Lord Hendy, the current rail minister, who was clear about the future role of elements of the Department for Transport.
It's not really a contract because we own the thing.
Yeah.
So that can be immediately lessened. The people who Alex Hines employs, who manage franchises, they can be switched off and turned down because we own the thing.
We invite the movers and shakers of today's railway to express their views and offer insight into the challenges they face. Matt Rice is Chief Operating Officer of Northern Trains.
We're running those services pretty reliably, and that ripples across then. So for the last 3 periods, so from January to March, period 11 to 13, our average cancellation rate as a whole of Northern has been around the 2%, 2.5%.
Right.
And when you consider those cancellation figures that you talked about, well, they're in double digits. And look, and frankly, in some areas, in some service clusters, we're far higher than that. It is a night and day scenario.
Ellie Burrows, Regional Managing Director, Eastern, for Network Rail.
So I do think we have been very, very clear in both with the regulator and with our industry partners about the impact of this timetable change. When you are increasing the number of services, we know that that makes performance more challenging. And when you look at the construct of this timetable, we do see services operating with a number of services behind on minimum headways. That in itself creates performance risk.
And the ever-popular Steve White, Managing Director of South Eastern Railway.
So what I'd like to see 3 years from now is a railway where our customers would see a more punctual railway with fewer cancellations and higher customer satisfaction. Our ambition, which is not a funded plan, but it's our ambition, is 90% customer satisfaction, 90% time to 3, and fewer than 2% cancellations.
The growing impact and influence of green signals has enabled us to be granted wonderful behind-the-scenes access to help explain and showcase the railway at the sharp end of delivery and innovation. And we take you there with us to share our privileged access. We visited Mid Wales to see how track renewals were carried out in a unique and collaborative way.
Running from the 17th of March to the 2nd of April, the work comprises full track renewal for 2 miles and 10 chains, 8 cess miles of vegetation management, bridge abutment works at Glandovey, rock netting and drainage renewals at Talerthig, level crossing renewal at Buttington. Total cost, £15 million, but the money saved doing it the way they have, £1.8 million. It's a short distance to the track renewal site.
We spent time with Network Rail looking at the challenging issue of trespass in Leeds and Bradford.
The cost to so many lives, whether it's those directly affected by trespass or those delayed or inconvenienced because of it, makes it worth doing everything we can to reduce the number of incidents.
I do believe people trespassing know they shouldn't be there. I've got no, I'm under no illusion that they don't know that. But it's just a case of, do they know the dangers? Do they know what could happen?
Ever-popular guest Nick Millington, MBE, Route Director of Wales and Borders for Network Rail, took us behind the scenes to see how Victorian signalling is still relevant to the operation of the railway today.
It's like stepping back in time. Mean, it's just like semaphores, manual boxes.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's absolutely brilliant, but presumably it creates challenges of its own, does it?
It absolutely does. So we have got a number of mechanical signal box, heritage signal boxes here.
Yeah.
Severn Bridge, Sutton Bridge, Abbey Foregate, Crewe Junction's behind us there. If you look at all of the points here, all, or mainly all, mechanical driven. We've got some motorised points, but we're not getting any big investment here soon. Okay.
So there's no re-signalling coming?
No re-signalling here. So it's a case of trained artisans, of which we've got a number here in the Shrewsbury delivery unit, caring for this perpetually.
A very special invite from Avanti West Coast enabled us to witness the preparations for diversions over the Settling Carlisle Railway in 2026.
Exercises such as these cost money over and above the normal operating cost of running a railway. So I ask Andy, who's paying?
Now, one of the challenges, of course, things that this is the cost of doing this. And if it's requiring support, is this something that, I suppose the Department of Transport have looked at and said, no, actually, it is a good thing to keep people on trains, even though it's going to cost us a bit in the short term.
So the transport focus research previously has, really illustrated the importance of keeping customers on trains as much as possible, and that's none more so than in that bank holiday period after the Christmas closure, and customers that might not be using rail particularly frequently, making those journeys back home, and quite often having presents and large amounts of luggage with them. So there is a real benefit of keeping passengers on trains.
And one of our most popular videos, made by Richard in 2025, was an exclusive look at GB Rail Freight's magnificent Class 99 ahead of its formal launch. Not far short of 300,000 views, and still counting.
I did wonder when I was stood outside that these pillars might be a bit obtrusive, but they're not at all.
No, not at all. And even when you've got that, if you're driving a 66 or an earlier type of locomotive where you're almost in the windscreen,
down,
you can look down. You just want to look down, just look in your screen.
Cameras.
And if it's dirty, put the windscreen up right, it'll clean the camera.
Everything. I find that's absolutely superb. I love that. Yep. I'm guessing that it is. It's a cup holder.
It's a cup holder.
The heritage sector was well covered, a sector vitally important to local and regional economies. Richard and Stef went to Bala in North Wales to see how a £5 million extension will transform the local community.
Okay, we're on the site of the new station. This is fantastic. It's so central.
It's brilliant. We bought this some years ago. Couldn't be a better location. There's a public car park opposite us, and we're just off the high street. So you'll see how convenient it is.
It's like 2-3 minutes, isn't it? No,
less than that, 30 seconds.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And Richard got to travel on a steam locomotive footplate.
The lake is of glacial origin, and although once 8 miles long, what we have today is 4 miles long by a mile wide. It is crossed by the River Dee, and its waters are famously deep and clear, although it's also subject to sudden and dangerous floods.
We visited the wonderful Severn Valley Railway on the Worcestershire-Shropshire border.
First stop, the boiler shop.
This feels purpose-built. When was this shop actually built?
It is purpose-built, and it was definitely, probably at the time, the first one of its type built. That was in the late 1980s, 88 to 89 it was built and completed. Overhead craneage in there, which at that stage was definitely unheard of.
Yeah.
So we used to rely on old steam cranes to move stuff. So it totally transformed all the boiler repairs that we were doing in the late 80s, and obviously then subsequently it has evolved, from the 90s onwards.
Yeah.
The remarkable Barrow Hill Roundhouse in Derbyshire.
And we eventually acquired it off the British Rail Property Board at the end of '96. We'd raised 350,000 in various grants, and we started the process to rebuild it in '97.
Was it always your intention for it to be just a museum, or a museum and a commercial railway depot as well?
Well, of course, things develop, don't they? So initially it was just a museum, just wanted to save my childhood railway train spotting depot. And of course, the reality of finances came very quickly, and we needed to raise income. So that's when we started the process of creating the business plan.
And at the other end of the scale, the Perrygrove Steam Railway in Gloucestershire. Steve Oates, Chief Executive of the Heritage Railway Association, had some salutary words for the future.
Have we got some of the right governance in heritage railways? Have we got people sat on boards who really understand all these issues, the financial issues, the safety issues, the heritage issues, and know how to balance them and make it...
The way you're phrasing that suggests that you think we may not do in all cases.
We don't.
Live broadcasts are now increasingly popular, and we were proud to be the official YouTube channel broadcasting live from the brilliant Greatest Gathering event as part of Rail 200 at Alstom's Derby Litchurch Lane in August. Broadcasters Jeremy Vine and Mark Radcliffe were amongst our first guests.
Do we? Where are you guys from?
Burnley.
Burnley.
Yeah.
We don't really talk about that, but
Right.
Oldham originally, grew up in Blackburn.
Right,
So
and I'm Bolton, because when I
Wow.
saw
Well, there we
when I
go.
saw
Can I
Jeremy,
just throw Cheam down as a challenge?
We have a growing band of members to whom we are extremely grateful. Their support enables us to do what we do. We produce plenty of members-only content in 2025, such as my own popular book club. This landmark book is based on 3 earlier, shorter books by CJA, covering the 462s of the London Midland and Scottish Railway, the London and North Eastern Railway, and the Southern Railway. The last was written jointly with SC Stephen Townrow. Richard's new series of railway walks.
Today's walk from Black Dog Halt, which is where we'd walked to in part 1, episode 1. And I'm hoping that today I'll be able to walk to Stanley Bridge Halt, which is the other intermediate station between here, between Cairn and Chippenham.
And of course, our very popular weekly Raw and Uncut show, in which we do let our hair down on a fairly regular, chaotic, and often irreverent basis. So, I think Stef ought to start, seeing as she's been sunning herself and not doing a fat lot for the last couple of weeks.
Oh, that's a really nice start. That's a nice start, that is. Welcome to Raw and Uncut, that Stef is starting to wonder why she came back for.
Cab rides, such as an HST on the Great Western Main Line. And quirkier trips, such as the wonderful Great Orme Tramway in North Wales. On the lower section, tight curbs can produce loud flange squeal very close to houses, and so drivers use this valve to release a trickle of water to lubricate the wheels. This not only reduces wear, it does eliminate the potentially annoying flange screeching every 10 minutes or so amongst the town's houses. We also produced explainers on the 10 things you need to know about rail nationalisation.
2. Did privatisation have any benefit? Yes, it did. When British Rail handed over things to the private companies in the 90s, the number of passenger journeys made each year on the whole railway was around 800 million. By the time that the pandemic hit in 2020, that had more than doubled to 1.7 billion.
And how to buy the cheapest rail ticket.
Number 1. What is the cheapest way to buy train tickets? This is probably the one everyone really wants to know the answer to. Where should you book to get the cheapest deal? The answer is actually pretty straightforward and surprising. It makes no difference whatsoever, with a few caveats.
2025 has been a wonderful year for green signals, and we're looking forward to an even better year in 2026. Thanks so much for coming along with us on the ride in 2025. Please stay with us. So, Richard, if there's one sort of thing that came across in voicing that, which was another epic editing job, by the way, so well done on that.
Thank you.
I can see just how much effort's gone into that. Was just how much we've covered. It's a bit like boiling frogs, isn't it? It rolls by week, and we do a bit more, and we do a bit more, and we do a bit more. But I suppose it's like when you're walking up some great hill, occasionally you pause and look back over your shoulder and think, oh my God, we really have come up. What an amount of stuff we've been blessed, privileged to cover.
And it's been fun, hasn't it? I'm waiting for the WhatsApp. Mostly, okay. I'm waiting for the WhatsApp. Why wasn't I in the edit? You know, why wasn't my bit of interview? Yeah, but that's the problem. You end up having to cut so much out to make it.
It's a flavour
but it's been a lot of fun.
It absolutely has. And, all thanks, not only to the green signals out there who support us, but all the people that you showed there and the ones that we weren't able to show within the railway who've gone out of their way to facilitate what we're doing.
Totally.
And have value in what we see value in what we're doing and for them being involved with it. Here's to another exhausting year in 2026, which I'm quite sure it will be. So, And now it's time to thank everyone who supports us. So first of all, thanks to RIA, the Railway Industry Association, our programme supporter, and to Rail Business Daily, our media supporter. But then a big thank you to everyone who's left us a super thanks on YouTube this week. And you all are Caroline Cleveley, John Kirkman, Alan Kirkman, Richard Skelton, Simon H., Andrew Seddon, Graham Whitley, Bob Walsh, Chris Exley, the Independent Brigline Rail Group, Jeff Simmons, John W., Alistair Rutledge, and Nigel Mapston. So thanks to everyone who leaves us super thanks, not only this week, but throughout the past year. Your support is very welcome, truly humbling, and it really does make a huge difference to us. So thank you, one and all, from all three of us.
Absolutely. And thank you also to our new members who are, I'm going to have to read this one, Nigel, KXXNDXVXS. There you go.
Sounds like a password.
Indeed. Matthew M., and thanks also to Andrew Long 6438 and Colin Brace, who upgraded from bronze to silver. Thank you, one and all. It's hugely appreciated. We do publish a list of all our amazing members in the end credits of the show. So we're grateful to everybody, which is why we do that. If you're not already a member and you'd really like to support us in 2026, and in our little year in review video, you got a glimpse of some of the things we do for members, please do click join on YouTube or click the link in our description to our Patreon page to find out more, because without our incredibly supportive members, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And we do have loads more planned, as Nigel said, for a very busy 2026. So do check membership out if you're interested.
Right, at this point is when we would usually do our news round. But since this is a bit of a special week, looking back at 2025, and we're all still in festive mode, it has to be said, even Richard, we have something extra special to share instead. 2025 has, of course, been the year of Railway 200 and the spectacular Greatest Gathering event in August at Alstom's Derby Lit Church Lane site. And I think my feet have only just about recovered, Richard. I think we did 7.5 miles back and forth between our stand and the car park, didn't we?
It was something, wasn't it? Now, obviously, the events like that require people to put them together, and there was a small group that did that. But I suppose the two driving forces behind that were Gus Dunster, the managing director of the Severn Valley Railway, but also James Dobson, who claims to have originally had the idea for it, who's an operations service manager at Avanti West Coast, and they were absolutely dead on the feet at the end of the Greatest Gathering. But I managed to catch up with James and with Gus on the Severn Valley Railway in October. And I had a chance to chat to them about their reflections on what it had been all about, whether it achieved the objectives that they set out at the beginning. And here's the video of that interview. Well, guys, James, Gus, you guys were the driving force, the vision, the energy, if you like, behind the Greatest Gathering. And it's been a couple of months now, almost exactly. Apart from having been able to have a bit of sleep and hopefully a decent holiday, what's your sort of reflection 2 months after it, as to once you've had time to let the dust settle, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the first thing is that when you go onto social media and you see stuff on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and I suppose it's just, you need the 2 months to take stock and look at it and think, well, blimey, yeah, actually, we did it. And I think that the immediate thing that comes to my mind is that it just totally surpassed. I think we thought it was going to be good, didn't we? But I don't quite think we knew how good it was going to be. And I think it's fair to say that, it certainly surpassed our expectations.
So that's the feeling, that it really surpassed expectations.
Yeah, I think so, Richard. Very much the case. I mean, it was important to get away and have a break after it. I mean, we both had holidays, almost not immediately, but within weeks afterwards, and I think that was really important. Certainly for me, when I was sort of reflecting on the beach, I had time to look at social media and to read all these emails and various things that were just kept on coming.
And still are.
Yeah. And I think when the railway press in particular published their issues immediately after the event, some of those were a week or 10 days after the event. Some of them were 3 or 4 weeks afterwards.
Sure.
The plaudits were just amazing, and I was just at that point thinking, my goodness me, you know, we did this. I'm feeling a bit emotional now just answering the question, actually, because the extent to which it was received is just mind-blowing, really. I just can't still get my head around it, if I'm honest with you.
We were very lucky because we saw a bit behind the scenes what you guys were doing. I'll never forget, you guys were going to come on Green Signals on our live show, I think on the first morning.
That's right.
And you texted to say that, yeah, James and I, we were still shunting at like 2 o'clock in the morning, so is it okay if we do it another time?
Yeah.
Which was entirely understandable. I mean, how many people, have you worked out how many people are actually involved in putting that on? Not the people that went, just the people involved to actually make that sort of thing happen.
In terms of like a collective number, the straight answer to that is no. I mean, there was a core working group that we rallied together, really, didn't we? That was it 8 or 9 people?
Yeah, no more than that.
So, I mean, it was made up of 2 Alstom colleagues, Ben Goodwin, Catherine Lancaster, and then myself, Gus, Richard Stanton, Simon Turner, Andy Doyle, Jason Nash, and Joey Lamb. So all had individual roles and our own part to play in basically putting on the event as you and all the visitors saw it.
I remember talking to Helen Hamlin, who's sort of senior network rail ops person, and she said just the number of people involved in network rail ops, you know, managing Derby, all the movements. I mean, she sent me a list. It goes on to 2 pages of A4. That was just network rail ops. You just think, wow, the number of people to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably describes in a nutshell the level of industry engagement that we had. So it's true to say, Richard, that James and I had this vision, but it's all really well having a vision, but if nobody supports that vision, you're not going to get very far, are you? Well, goodness me, did people support this vision? You know, and that might be down to the fact that we do like to be a little bit persuasive. But I think also, but I think people really bought into Railway 200 and the sort of vision that Peter Hendy set out initially. And then we came along with the idea for this event, and people really wanted to see it happen. Because I think some cynical commentators would have said, oh, the railway's far too fragmented, there's too much stuff going on with GBR, you know, you can't do this in this day and age.
We did get told that.
Yeah, we did get told that by a number of people, but by far and away the majority of the industry that we engaged with were, oh no, we're going to do this.
That's brilliant. I mean, I remember when Peter Hendy said that right at the very beginning, and this was before the Greatest Gathering was sort of announced or possibly even conceived, I don't know. But he talked about having lots and lots of events, and that, I wasn't cynical. I thought, I just can't see how that could really work. I mean, I'm delighted to say I was totally and utterly wrong. I mean, it worked magnificently. It wasn't just, I mean, throughout the whole year, there's been something almost all the time, which is tremendous. Yeah. And I suppose, you know, we mentioned sort of Network Rail and their ops team. I'm guessing there was a whole host of other people who did incredible things. I mean, just the shunting. I mean, and the bringing stuff from all over the country. I mean, I know you don't want to single anybody out, maybe particularly, but where were the real shifts put in?
Well, there's a few organisations that I think we will specifically highlight, Richard. So for me, when we split up really the engagement around different operators. So in terms of what I was doing, which was the heritage sector and some of the mainline operators, I'm going to start with Severn Valley Railway because I should do that. I think, Richard. You know, I volunteered this organisation. Whether they wanted to or not, to provide 21 exhibits at the Greatest Gathering. We were the largest in volume exhibitor there, and we did some quite unusual things to get some of those vehicles there. So I committed this organisation, both in terms of the paid staff and the volunteers, to do an awful lot for that event. And some were sceptical, but they all bought into it, and afterwards they all completely embraced the concept and said, yeah, it was amazing. You know, so but I must acknowledge the extent to which I committed them to do stuff. And the other organisation I would highlight would be West Coast Railways. West Coast Railways did an awful lot of specialist moves for us, steam in particular. They also did some other stuff like bring the 91s from Neville Hill, things that you wouldn't necessarily associate them with, and they did a raft of stuff from here and loads of other, you know, really intricate, difficult moves. But the things that they a bread and butter for them. And it's true to say that certainly from that side of the exhibits, it would not have been as successful had it not been for them.
And presumably others as well.
Yeah, well, similar to Gus, I'll start with Avanti, and I mean, I suppose I'll just owe a huge thanks really to our organisation, but no one more so than Andy Mellors. To be honest with you, he totally just bought into the vision. When I met him to say, this is, I've had this idea and we're going to sort of start getting on with this. Would Avanti consider supporting it? And it was almost sort of, yes is the answer, what's the question? So I just can't, say thank you enough. And I think that actually taking the Pendolino over there, both in January for the launch event and, in January for the launch event, was just a masterstroke, because industry engagement was good. But when the Pendolino appeared in January for the launch event, we saw industry engagement sort of triple overnight. And then to do the special charter train that we did,
That's
which
amazing.
again added to the charity pot. I'm just very grateful for all the support from Avanti and Rail Operations Group as well. Similar to West Coast Railways, they also did more than their fair share of moving the unique assets around the country for us, and just nothing was too much trouble to them. And we did put a bit of a call to arms into them. Sort of late, was it the Monday night or early Tuesday morning, and Matt Thompson and his team appeared just with I think you've used the phrase before, but just a can-do attitude and what can we do to help. They really helped get the site in shape.
James, when you sort of sat and thought about it, did you set a sort of an objective for it? Did you say, right, this is what we want the greatest gathering to achieve?
Yeah, I think there were a number of things, but I think that the thing that's really at the forefront of my mind is almost reflecting on what some people may even refer to as like my relatively short career. I've been in the industry 12 years, but I came fresh out of school at age 16 and was employed by Virgin Trains. And I know sort of how powerful and sort of meaningful to me that was. And if we could put an event on that really sort of captivated the minds of young people who were considering a career in rail, I just hope that it has almost encouraged other people who are potentially in my position at sort of age 14, 15 and debating a career in rail or actively wanting to pursue one, to actually making sure that they do.
So for you, actually inspiring the next generation of people to go to career, that was a really important part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I came away thinking it was just the most extraordinary celebration, but it's really interesting to hear. No, actually, you also wanted to inspire the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we would be lying to ourselves if we said to you that it wasn't a celebration, because it absolutely was. And we wanted to raise, a lot of money for the causes as well that Railway 200 were, or are, I should say, supporting. So there were a multitude of objectives, but certainly one that was at the forefront of my mind was inspiring the next generation of railway people and really showcasing the future of rail.
One of the people that I bumped into there, who was as ebullient as ever, of course, was Pete Waterman. And I said to Pete, what's your take on this? Well, he couldn't say enough positive things, right? And he was he says, I'm not sure we'll see anything quite like this again. But he said, but the best thing about it are the children, the young people. And I've got to say, as soon as he'd said that, I was then looking around thinking, he's right. There was an extraordinary family presence and with lots of young kids. It's a great thing, but is that also a good sign of things? Because there's always that risk that the heritage movement's a bit, it's an aging group. That suggested not.
Yeah, so I think it was great for all purposes, particularly for the element that James mentioned earlier on. But also it shows that there is still interest in railways, which I think a lot of the mainstream press and media might have you believe that there's no real interest in railways, and the romantic era of the steam train is long past, which it is, of course. But there is interest in railways, and we've seen this at our events here on the SVR. You've been out on the railway today. There's actually quite a large number of young people here. There'll be more at the weekend, obviously, when the schools and colleges are closed. And they are interested in railways generally. We see them coming to steam events and diesel events and other things as well. And it's important that we market to that generation because they are the future. They're the future for rail industry professionals. They're the future volunteers of Heritage Railways, and they're the customers of now and tomorrow.
One of the things I must say to you, and I'm sure others have given you this praise as well, I just thought the way the whole site was laid out was superb. You know, sometimes you can go to events like that and there's almost like there's a nucleus, which is amazing. And then there's lots of like bits on the fringe and they're not as good. Not at this. Everywhere you went, there was something interesting. I mean, that was clearly a deliberate strategy, but that must have been a logistical nightmare.
Well, I think there's two answers to that. I mean, I think we probably can't take all the credit for that, because in terms of the way that the non-rail exhibits were set out, and the way that the queuing system all worked to get you in and navigate you around the site, that was obviously the team at Alstom that did that. But in terms of the rail exhibits, and
Richard Stanton, to be fair,
and Richard Stanton, in terms of the rail exhibits, let you in on a bit of a secret. Stuff wasn't actually where it was supposed to go. So we had a few logistical challenges on the Monday and the Tuesday in terms of getting stuff in and onto the site. As you know, we were shunting quite late on the Thursday night into the early hours of Friday morning, and we kind of just had to put stuff where we feasibly could. So,
but I think you're being very very modest there, really, because I must admit, when I went home on the Thursday night after the launch event, I remember thinking, there's just stuff's not quite as organised, and I thought, and then I kind of came up the next day and you think, how have they done that? It was absolutely superb. Well, that was the reason why you were presumably up till the middle of the night.
Well, I was a bit of a lightweight, Richard. I went home at midnight because I was back in the morning doing an interview on BBC Breakfast News. But James and a few others were there till 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And it's true to say, I mean, it's kind of you to say what you've said. And I think you've backed up a theory that I've had, that the majority of people were completely unaware that actually what they saw was not quite how we would have planned it. I mean, James and I must have spent many hours poring over a map of the site, moving things around on scale sizes. I think we've both got a copy of that still at home somewhere.
Brilliant.
And the final show was not quite as we imagined it to be. And there were a few vehicles actually which didn't really appear in the show at all. They were visible, but not to the extent that they should have been. And we just ran out of time. And actually, 4106 was one of those. You know, that should have been more prominently displayed over where the Class 45s and all that stuff were, and we just didn't have time to get it over there. Same with the high neck and the other Deltic. But then there were some unintended consequences positively as well. So what I would term to be the most iconic lineup of the event, which was the Eurostar, HST Power Cars, Pendolino, and 91. That was as we planned it, actually, just about. But the Deltic was not planned to be part of that lineup. But we put it there in the end. We had a sort of flash of inspiration at silly o'clock in the morning when we were doing this shot, saying, well, actually, they are part of the high-speed story of rail in the UK, the first regular timetable, 100-mile-an-hour services on the East Coast Main Line. So we put Deltic 15 there. It almost sort of just ended up there by default.
I assumed that it was always planned to be that, on exactly that high-speed story. So there you go. I've got to ask you this. You've had 2 months now. Okay, so that's plenty enough time to sort of recharge the batteries. What's next? I just sense with you guys, it's never a case of, well, we've done it now. There's got to be something else in the works. What's the next big event? Got something in the stocks that you're prepared to share at this stage? You're just going to keep us guessing.
We are going to keep you guessing, Richard, I think. Oh. But what I would say is that having both had time to reflect on it, then there is more to come, yeah.
Right.
There is more to come. And the first thing is to keep the legacy of the Greatest Gathering going, for the reason that James described in his first answer, and that is because actually it's become something much more powerful than we expected it to be. Because I think the railway industry, you sent us a lovely email actually talking about what the Greatest Gathering had achieved positively for the industry. And I think we should just look at that for a minute, actually, because the rail industry is facing probably one of its most challenging times at the moment. But a lot of good could and should come out of that. And if we can help with that in any way by promoting the legacy of the Greatest Gathering and inspiring the next generation, and also actually showcasing what you can do with a can-do attitude. And I don't mean to insult or criticise anybody in the rail industry today, because there are many hundreds of thousands of really professional people working very hard every day to deliver that service. But the system doesn't allow them to do that to the best of their ability. And now I can say that because I'm not, necessarily, involved in that on a daily basis now. But I see that all the time, and we saw that with the Greatest Gathering. But we also saw what happens when people are allowed to give of their best. And so, if the Greatest Gathering can act as a catalyst a little bit, to show those opinion makers and those decision makers just how they need to get the industry structured and the system that they need to have in place. And for me, that would be less oversight and more freedom for people to actually give of their best, knowing that they won't be criticised for doing that. Because we really saw a lot of people, you talked about Helen Hamlin in her list, hundreds and hundreds of people, some of whom we never met, but they really did give their best to make this event work.
That for me was almost the biggest takeaway. So you say you've been in the industry for 12 years or so, which in some respects is still relatively near the beginning, right? Your background is relatively recent, and yet what you achieve for me is almost giving an industry permission again to be the best that it could be, to do what it once was just able to do without even thinking about it, free from any of that, let's face it, interference really, and just get on and do it. And you may not even realise you were doing it, but that's what happened. And I personally felt there was all those railway people going, this is what we're good at, okay, so this was an event, but it just shows it can be done. And that was always my biggest takeaway from the whole thing. So it was just fabulous.
Things can be done, Richard. In life, if you're driven and you have a vision, you can do things. And I think it's really important. And we did set out with that in mind. I'll be totally honest with you, we did. James and I worked together for a good number of years, and even in the situation that the rail industry finds itself in now, you can do things, and you can do things for the good of the end user, which is ultimately what we're all here for. And this event proved that beyond any doubt whatsoever.
Well, honestly, guys, I thought it was absolutely extraordinary. That's clearly not a minority view. Everybody who went thought it was fabulous. Everybody who didn't go wish they had been able to go.
Yeah.
I'm really encouraged that you're actually going to keep us in suspense, because that tells me there is something that's being thought about. That's brilliant. I think that legacy is important, as you say. But I think just on behalf of an industry really, and everybody interested in railways, I think I'm going to take the opportunity to sort of, on everybody's behalf, thank you, because I just thought it was wonderful. And there may not be anything quite like that again, but there was something like that, and you guys made it happen. So listen, congratulations, thank you, and here's to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
The one thing we didn't talk about in that film, of course, is how much money they raised. We did actually, but they didn't know at the time. No, they didn't know, so I didn't use that bit. Now we do know, and of course we know it was over £100,000, which is absolutely fantastic. And they're still earning money effectively. I think there's still some merchandising or stuff, so it's still going on. But wow, what an amazing achievement for those 5 charities.
It was, and you touched on something that really hit me, was that you and I and Stef were all there the night before for the opening ceremony thing that went on quite late. And you rightly picked up on the fact that when we left, I thought, this display is nowhere near put together. Is it going to be ready for the morning?
Yeah.
And then when we came back and there was that lineup of a Eurostar and HST, a Deltic, that across that particular was just astonishing. But interesting to hear that they didn't quite get it finished nonetheless, and that some exhibits weren't quite in the location. But no, it was still a damn good show.
40 wasn't in the right place, but look, it was still, yeah, you're absolutely right. It was an amazing achievement, really amazing.
So well done to Gus and James and the rest of the team. You asked one question which they weren't able to answer, and I guess it must be into thousands, the number of people who actually played a part in putting that show on right across the industry must have been fast, So
it was fast.
Thanks to all them, from your first whistleblow at the start of the year at the Avon Valley near you, right through to that and since it's been great, hasn't it? So the news rain will be back next week. So if you'd like to send us any snippets of news, you can drop us an email at news@greensignals.org. And if we use your tip, we'll give you a name check. Can't say fairer than that.
Can't indeed. Anyway, so it is time to do the quiz, and we thought we'd still do the quiz this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, last week's question was this: I said broad, and it was from our good friend William Barter. Broad gauge track to a gauge of 7 foot and a quarter
an inch.
Was the brainchild of Isambard Kingdom Brunel. But which other famous London terminus featured broad gauge track, and why? Quite a few people pointed out that they presumed I meant other than Paddington, hence the reference to Isambard Kingdom Brunel. And yes, you're absolutely right. I meant other than Paddington, right? So if you said Paddington, that wasn't the right answer. And it's a bit complicated, this one. It's more complicated than we first thought.
Oh, go on.
The Great Western Railway did run broad gauge track along what we now know as the north side of the tube on the Circle Line from down to Farringdon, right?
I did not know that.
There was a terminus, but they fell out with the Metropolitan Railway very quickly, apparently. But there was, for a little bit of time, broad gauge track in Farringdon Street, which was the terminus. Yeah. So you had to say Farringdon Street. Farringdon wasn't okay, but Farringdon Street was for a while a terminus, and then it became a through station pretty quickly after. But so Farringdon Street was an acceptable answer, as was, of course, the one we were really thinking of, which was London Victoria. So for a number of years, the Great Western Railway had broad gauge track, and then, would you believe it, running rights over mixed gauge track from sort of roughly what we would probably call North Pole Depot today, Old Oak, through to Kensington and Battersea, and then up into Victoria Station.
Well, every day's a school day. I have no idea.
Remarkably, that lasted for quite some time, actually, even up to the Great War. I mean, obviously, by that time, I guess they were standard gauge. The Great Western were running services from London Victoria to Wolverhampton, via the Bicester cutoff. So, yeah, quite. I agree with you. I had no idea.
Good grief.
So the acceptable answers were Farringdon Street and London Victoria. And the winner, randomly chosen from all the correct answers we had, we did have quite a few who certainly got London Victoria, was Andy Kench. So well done, Andy. If you send us an email to quiz@greensignals.org, we will get your mug out to you. I've got a couple to do once we get past the Christmas break. And to this week's quiz question, I think a relatively easy one, but hopefully one that will stop people using Google too much. And it's this: where might I have found a station that was built with the sole purpose in mind of serving a factory or industrial facility? Now, I can think of a few. So the winner is the one who comes up with the most. There were some that then did end up serving passengers as well. You could get on and off there. So we'll allow those. But if its original purpose was to serve a factory industrial unit, there are a few that only ever did that, right? But let's see how many people can get. So it's a different kind of quiz question this week, but hopefully a bit of fun. If you think you know, please, answers to quiz@greensignals.org by midday on Saturday, January the 3rd. We'll put all the correct answers in a hat. It'll take us a bit longer to sift through this time because we'll be having to check them and see who's got the most. But then we'll select a winner at random to receive one of our very special Green Signals quiz winners mugs.
Indeed. Well, I'm just still reeling about broad gauge into Victoria, I have to say.
Oh, there's pictures.
Is there really?
Track diagrams. Oh, yeah. It's quite remarkable. Yeah.
You think you know your subject, and
because I think the West London Extension Railway, I think, was actually a joint venture between the Great Western Railway, the London Chatham and Dover Railway, and the London Brighton South Coast Railway. So there you go.
Well, I don't know about Blackburn, but in Burnley they would have said, well, I'll go to the foot of our stairs.
Yes, I know that one. Remember that.
Right. In keeping with the theme of this episode, and finally good news story comes from HS2 this week with a very impressive progress update on just how far the project has come in the last year. And we must not lose sight of that amidst all the other stuff that's said about HS2. All 23 miles of deep bore tunnels have now been excavated on the opening section of the railway between Old Oak Common and Birmingham Curzon Street. 70% of the project's earthworks have been delivered and almost 300,000 tonnes of steel have been used, which is 69% of the total that will be required for the build. Here are some more astonishing Olympic swimming pool style numbers, because you know I like those. In the last year alone, around 1,500 segments of viaducts have been installed, up from 860 in 2024. There was a record first when engineers slid a massive 14,500 tonne box structure into position under the A46 Kenilworth bypass. It's the heavy of its kind in Europe. We've got really good at that kind of thing on HS2, haven't we? And will enable high-speed trains to pass under the dual carriageway. And the incredible 2.1 mile long Colne Valley Viaduct was completed. December also marks the first anniversary of Mark Wilde's appointment as chief exec, who is apparently at an advanced stage of completing his project reset. An important reminder before we close that HS2 has many challenges ahead, but it was worth taking a moment to celebrate the achievements this year nonetheless, because as I said earlier, amidst all the controversy about the project as a whole, we must not lose sight of the magnificent job that those men and women are doing on actually building it and pushing boundaries back and creating firsts all along the line. We're very
Indeed.
proud of them, aren't we?
We are. I mean, we should also just say, by way of balance, that it's been reported that Mark Wilde has provided advice to the Transport Secretary confirming that the Railway's 2029, sort of 2033 opening schedule window cannot now be achieved. And they are in the process of, well, he's in the process of finalising a new range of credible costs and schedule estimates, which I'm sure he will advise the Secretary of State on at some point, and we'll be able to report on that. So that's that's given the media a bit of an opportunity to say that it's not all going so well. And I saw one wag even suggested it might have been cheaper to have moved to Birmingham, but put all that to one side. What you've just said, Nigel, absolutely spot on. It's brilliant what the men and women are doing on the ground every day.
We will never stop saying that.
Indeed.
And sadly, that's all we've got time for this week, and indeed this year. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Please don't forget to give us a thumbs up or leave a comment on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, just click, but it does help us a lot. And if you really want to support us, find out about membership on YouTube or Patreon. But most importantly, join us again next week for our first always free show of 2026. Richard, Stef and me wish you all nothing but good things for 2026, and we hope you find health, wealth and happiness for you and those close to you. Please do stay with us for another year's green signalling. We'll be here. So we'll see you next year. Until then, it's goodbye from me and...
It's goodbye from me.
Have a great new year.